What made the Woodinville store stand out so much?
I think the areas that we did differently than other stores were we got heavy into rentals. We became the #1 rental store in the Play It Again system. It kind of opened us up to a whole nother client base. And I viewed it as we have a new customer, a used customer, and a rental customer. They're different people. You can't just leave one out. If you were just a used sporting goods store and didn't carry any new gear and didn't do any new rentals, you're not going to appeal to everybody. But my approach is I'm going to try to appeal to as wide a group as I can and give them what they're looking for.
Building a legacy starts with the bold decision to take a leap of faith. Behind every empire lies a foundation of grit, willpower, and the courage to take big risks. Welcome to Entrepreneurship Unlocked, where world shakers in the business world gather to share their stories. We're diving deep into the mindset of the modern entrepreneur to show you exactly what it takes to become truly unlocked. Join us in the pursuit of excellence with your host, Seth Rudin. This is Entrepreneurship Unlocked.
Hey there, this is Seth Rudin with Entrepreneurship Unlocked, and I'm joined here today by Mr. Rick Bauman. He's an entrepreneur. He and his brother started 2 locations of Play It Again Sports in the Washington area. We're going to dive into his experience of being an entrepreneur, as well as selling his business through IBA, which I was fortunate to be his broker. Rick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, you did a pretty good job there, but my name is Rick, and I own Play It Again Sports in Woodinville and Linwood. Sold my business 4 years ago through Seth, and currently enjoying my retirement.
And I like it that you still say you own Play It Again Sports versus I owned Play It Again Sports. You are retired, my friend.
Did I say own?
You did.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good habit. The one thing that stood out to me, to Rick, when I met him the first time was how well he knew his business and the passion he had for Play It Again Sports. And he's still a huge advocate, which I'm sure is going to come out on today's call. Let's go back in time a little bit. One of the things, you knew all the numbers of your business. Weren't you a CPA or something?
I was. So my early years, I was a CPA, did that for a few years in Florida. And then my goal after graduating college was to move out to Washington, spend a little time out here. Once I got my CPA, worked for several years, came out here, dabbled in a few things, did some real estate, went back to accounting, and then decided I need to find something else, something I really enjoy. And my brother presented me with the opportunity. He was researching getting into a sporting goods business that was a franchise and asked me for some advice on it, and ended up being that we opened it up together and decided to do it out in the Seattle area. Yeah.
Your family ran restaurants and bars?
Just restaurant. Yeah, my dad had a restaurant. So I kind of grew up in an entrepreneurial environment. Grandfather at a supermarket. So yeah, I could say it's in my blood.
So you like the retail space, but you were smart enough not to go into a restaurant. That's pretty hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never even thought about taking over my dad's restaurant. I'm a pretty independent person. I tended to, as my parents say, I wanted to get as far away from them as possible. So I moved from Fort Lauderdale to Seattle, which was about as far as I could possibly get.
But those retail chops stuck with you from your grandpa and your dad. That's pretty impressive. What was it like in the beginning days? You know, an accountant, which people typically, look at as conservative and analytical, to becoming, an entrepreneur starting a retail customer-facing store?
Being a CPA was good. It was. I learned a lot in a very short window of time, got exposed to a lot of businesses, saw a lot of the mistakes people make, a lot of disorganization, but it wasn't really a very exciting business to me. So I kind of knew early on that this was not going to be my long-term opportunity, and was always looking for something different. And eventually something came up.
So then let's talk about how was it getting started? What was the journey of the Linwood location? That was your first location.
Yeah, so my brother and I decided to open up in Linwood. We decided to go with the franchise. The franchise was based in Minneapolis. Very small franchise at that point, like 30 stores is all they had, but they were going to grow fast. Being out of Minneapolis, they were very into hockey. So we, growing up in Florida, knew nothing about hockey. And that was their first recommendation was, well, get near an ice rink. There's going to be, in my response was, I don't think there's any hockey here. And they're like, oh no, there is. Just trust it. Just look for it. So we found a couple of ice rinks and eventually located our store near one, because it turned out there wasn't any place to really buy gear, and it became a huge success. We opened up the store and we were packed with hockey customers. It was pretty astounding. And we became the top hockey store in the state in terms of retail. Coming from 2 guys who had never put on a pair of skates in their life was pretty interesting.
So let's talk about Played Against Sports. You can buy used, you can buy new, and you can maybe rent stuff. Can you talk about the business model?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything, and you have the option of doing whatever you feel works best for you. So the concept starts with used, but then you supplement with new. We've delved into rentals, which no other Played Again had actually ever done that before, and that became a really big thing for us. And then the service end as well, ski tune-ups, bike tune-ups. So it's a combination. It's multi-pronged business.
They gave you a lot of discretion. It wasn't a franchisor who hit you over the head with a hammer.
No, that was a good thing. There's pros and cons to a franchise. They're not as restrictive as many other ones. They let you have your own personality. So an example, like our Linwood store was the #1 hockey store in the state. Our Woodinville store, we didn't sell hockey. So two totally different personalities of stores.
Very good. And you built up a lot of knowledge, institutional knowledge about how to buy used products at random. I could walk in with a bike. I could walk in with used hockey equipment or a baseball bat, and you have to figure out how to determine what you're going to buy it from me. Is that right?
Yeah, it's far easier today. In fact, I always tell the younger guys how easy it is for them, because now you have the internet. You can look things up. You can Google search. So it's so easy. Somebody brings something in now, you can research it. Back in years ago, it's been 35 years now since we opened, we had no resources like that. There was no internet. Basically, we'd collect catalogs. Somebody came in with golf clubs. You really had no idea. You had to be up on the product and collecting catalogs of people, and it was just far more challenging, and you made mistakes, but you kind of went with your gut feel a lot more. And in fact, that's what I try to teach the younger guys now a little bit, is don't overanalyze, over research. You go with your gut feel. You're usually going to be pretty accurate. But yeah, it's always a challenge, and there's a lot of subjectivity in it as well.
Great. And you're balancing that with ordering new equipment and knowing the seasons and how far ahead you need to order it in order to be in the shelves at the right time.
Yeah, book product in advance. And again, you have to decide what sports you want to carry. And a big key to our business was being adaptable and changing with the market. When we first started, snowboards were just starting to come on the market, and it was 35 years ago. Nobody else carried them, and we kind of saw that this was really taking off, and people were making them out of their garages, and it was a lot of making contacts with people and getting new product in. So being on the cutting edge of, and that's happened a couple times with different products, is just being adaptable. And when you see a trend, when you're small, you can actually jump on it.
I would imagine having the franchise order and the network of all the stores. I think at the time there was 285, maybe 300 stores. Was there some purchasing power or any synergies you got?
Definitely on the new, the having a franchise behind you, they opened up some doors. I think I probably got more benefit out of having the network of other stores, just in terms of knowledge goes, because those are the people that operated stores, and we could share experiences. But the franchise itself was actually very good about the buying power, because they could go to a major vendor who normally wouldn't want to deal with a small store and say, look, we've got 200 stores that may be willing to buy from you, so let's put together a program. And that worked out pretty well.
And working with your brother, that was pretty cool. Was it aggravating or was it satisfying?
I will say we got along far better as adults working together than we did growing up, for sure.
Who was older?
He's older. He's 3 years older.
Excellent.
Yeah, that worked out well. And
at a high level, what were your roles?
We overlapped a lot. When you own a business, you wear a lot of different hats, and especially being as small as we were. I would say, there wasn't any particular area that I didn't do. I would say he didn't get involved in the bookkeeping side because he didn't need to. Mm-hmm. But there weren't really any, we both did ordering, we both did marketing, sales, of course, hiring, human resources. You put on a lot of hats.
Yeah. Excellent. Was there a sport that you guys specialized in? Like he would take hockey and you would take baseball or something like that?
Yeah, it would end up being that way, just because we would divvy sports up. It wasn't that either one of us had far greater knowledge in one versus the other, because we basically both learned everything. You had to. But you did have to divvy things up. Like for a certain number of years, I'd say, I'll do the baseball orders, you do the hockey orders, kind of like that. But then sometimes we'd switch. I'd get tired of one and we'd switch. So
who would get the hot-headed customers? Although you probably never had any. But if you did have a hot-headed customer.
Well, that's where you do the no-nose goes. And you just kind of...
Yeah, your signals?
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. What made Linwood so successful? What made it was the unique selling point?
Definitely hockey. I mean, hockey was the Linwood store. As I said before, we became the #1 hockey store, and definitely in the state of Washington, possibly even the entire Northwest.
Did you rent the hockey equipment out or just sell it?
Just sell it.
So makes sense. So then there was a move of the building that had a little interesting story. If you want to talk about that.
Sure. We were probably 20-something years in at that point, and our landlord sold our building to CVS Pharmacy, but we had just signed a lease, and I think CVS thought that, well, we'll just offer them a little bit and we'll just buy out their lease, but we didn't want to go. We've got a very successful business. So after about a year of negotiating with them, they eventually made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And we decided to sell the store, we decided to sell the store because we didn't want to have to move it. And my brother at that time his wife had some illness, and he was kind of getting on the verge of getting out. And we thought, well, let's go down to one store. It'll be easier for both of us. And we ended up selling the store to one of our former managers from maybe 5 or 10 years earlier. I don't remember how many years it was since he had worked for us prior to that, but he had moved out of the area, and we had kept in touch, and we decided, well, maybe I'll buy your store. So it worked out really well, and he's still operating it today. He moved the store.
He's a Sun Devil.
Yes. Yep.
Let's go Devils. As my monitor. Awesome story. So you then obviously were in Woodinville. You want to talk about how you got started in Woodinville and what year? And
we were about 2 years into our Linwood store, and we decided to open the Woodinville store. It's kind of crazy when you're young, the amount of risks that you'll take, because I was 27 when I opened Linwood, and the franchise they were growing really quickly. They gave us a right of first refusal on a second area. So we had an area of basically the whole east side, and they said, okay, well, within 2 years, you need to open a second store. Otherwise, we're going to sell that territory to somebody else. So that was kind of the push that we needed. And we said, okay, well, we don't want somebody else being that close to us. So we ended up deciding to open up the Woodinville store. We looked at other areas too. We looked at Kirkland, Redmond. It just so happened Woodinville had the best building for us. It wasn't so much at that point the community per se, but we found a really good location, and in retail, that's obviously important.
And Woodinville is a nice area. It's a growing area, right?
Yeah, it's grown. At the time it was smaller, but I lived in Redmond, so I knew the area well.
You're located in downtown Woodinville.
Yep.
It's still there, and there's a huge apartment complex and a bunch of growth.
Woodinville's great.
High-end income. So they're coming to your store. There's a park across the street.
Yep.
My baseball team that I coach has practiced and played baseball there.
Yeah, Woodinville's great. I live in Woodinville now, have for the last 25 years.
And this store was not chopped liver. This is like top 5, top 10 performing store in the nation.
Both
right?
stores, at given times during their time frame we were always top 20 stores, and dipped into the top 10, even the top 5 at certain points for both stores. Woodinville a little bit further towards that #1 spot, but both stores were very successful.
What made the Woodinville store stand out so much?
Well, I think the areas that we did differently than other stores were we got heavy into rentals. We became the #1 rental store in the Play It Again system. I'm a big believer in rentals, and I could talk about that, for lots of time. And I have with the Play It Again system before, to get other people involved in it. It kind of opened us up to a whole nother client base. And I viewed it as we have a new customer, a used customer, and a rental customer. They're different people. You can't just leave one out. If you were just a used sporting goods store and didn't carry any new gear and didn't do any new rentals, you're not going to appeal to everybody. But my approach is I'm going to try to appeal to as wide a group as I can and give them what they're looking for.
Right. And it's nice. If I correct you buy the new skis, you rent them, and then you sell them used.
Yeah. So it works out great for us, because after the rentals start to show wear and tear, I can easily move them into the used side and sell them off, which keeps our rental fleet fresh, and it makes our used customer happy. Just works well for everybody.
You take care of bikes. Bikes is a big deal.
Yeah, we have bikes are good. Yeah, interesting. In Woodinville, we're one of the top bike stores in the country. We also share the building with another bike store as well. Fortunately, we've had a good understanding with each other that, kind of like car dealerships, you're best to have multiple car dealerships right next to each other rather than try to avoid each other. So there's a synergy with us. He delves more into the higher end bikes. We're more on the used and the lower to mid price point. And between the two of us, everybody gets served.
That's awesome. Great job figuring all that out. You and your brother go down the franchise route, you continue to do this for, close to 35 years. If you're looking at a person looking to get a franchise, right, whether it's Play It Again Sports or something, right, they have a choice, right? They can do, would you go independent or would you go franchise?
I think it depends on the person and what your knowledge base is. For me, after a number of years in Play It Again, if I were to start over, I would say, no, I wouldn't go to a franchise because I have the knowledge now. But starting off, they definitely helped. I'm not sure if we would have succeeded if we didn't have them, because we would have made a lot of mistakes. And not having the, aside from just the franchisors' expertise, just all the other stores to lean on. If we didn't have that, we would have made even more mistakes. So
it's probably a windfall in marketing and customer trust the brand when they come in the store.
I guess so. Yeah, I think you could probably, depending on the franchise. Yeah, right. You're right. It gives you instant credibility, especially if there's established ones already in your area. Like for us, that wasn't the case because we were the first ones here. But yeah, I think if you've been working in an industry for a long time and you know what you're doing, then you could certainly open up something on your own. But if you're a total newbie, let someone else teach you from the mistakes that they've made. So you either buy a franchise or, plug towards you, buy an existing business, which is another really good way to go. I mean, it's far easier to buy an existing business than to start one from scratch. You
don't have to convince a customer of a new brand,
Yep.
New customer set, new industry sometimes with a startup, right? That can be it. So you figured out you wanted to retire. What was the aha moment that said, hey, I need to contact someone to help?
I've always decided I wanted to retire on top, and I know that it's best to retire when things are going well, and don't wait for things to start falling apart to say, okay, well now I want to get out, because at that point you're having a fire sale and you're not gonna get what you want out of the business. So I built the business up. We were having great years, year after year gains, and I thought, well, let's see what the business is worth. I was not really ready to get out at that point, but I just wanted to know. Found Seth as a business broker, and we talked, and his valuation was higher than I had expected, which was great, but I still wasn't ready. And I think it was probably 9 months before I decided to actually list.
Mm-hmm.
I went through the will he or won't he stage, as my wife said. Like, one day I want to sell, one day I don't. But things were going really smooth at the store. I had good people in place, and I decided, I want to get the store running as smoothly as possible if I'm going to hand it off to somebody. And that was kind of my goal. It was definitely not like, I got to get out of here, I'm just done with this. It was more of I've been doing the same thing for 30 something years, and my health is good. Maybe I should just see what else is out there, not in another business, but just a different lifestyle. Yeah. So I certainly could have kept going in the store, but in retrospect now, I'm glad that I ended up selling when I did, because it has given me just opportunity to do some different things and just relax. And I'm not sure if I would have kept going for another 3 to 5 years, if I would have gained anything else out of it personally.
Well, my friend talks about the retirement is a part of three phases: your go-go years, your slow-go years, and your no-go years.
Yeah.
So it seems like you definitely exited in your go-go years.
Exactly. Yeah.
You and your wife have traveled something?
Yeah, we've been doing some traveling. Of course, not as much as I would have thought, but we've been to Europe a few times. We're going to Portugal next month. Yeah, we're trying. We are homebodies to a certain extent. We like hanging out with our dog, and it's just been kind of nice to just slow things down. And
you're working out with your daughter and stuff?
Yeah, not so much with her per se anymore, but I definitely take care of my health a lot more, and I'm more structured on that, and eat well and exercise daily, and life has slowed down a little bit, and I'm good with that. And I do still kept on good relationships with the new owner of the store, so I'm still over there just helping him out a little here and there. I'm nothing very much, but just keeps me, I think he appreciates me being there just sometimes, just with questions and things, but I'm not working, but I'm still feel like I'm still attached to the store in some ways, even though contractually, I'm not in any way, but it's just nice to know that when I drive by.
It'd be crazy not to have you contribute, right? Like if you're willing to contribute, having someone with your expertise and charm in the store.
Well, I don't know about the charm part, but I feel like I do have some expertise, and it's nice knowing all the employees there, the staff. So I still feel like in some ways, like I'm kind of an owner, although I'm not. And I'm good with that. Yeah, it's fine.
Good. That's awesome. How was the process of going through the sales process of selling your business? What was that like?
It takes time. And again, I think the biggest thing is making sure your business, it's like selling a house. If you think of how many things you have to do before you can sell your house, everything has to be presented properly. So there's a lot of maintenance to make sure that your books look good and everything is organized, that everything in the store is looking good, inventory is clean, you don't have a lot of aged inventory, your staff is good. So that was kind of my goal for that 9 months, but from when I first talked to Seth and he planted the seed of selling to when we actually listed, is like, okay, I need to get this store running as perfectly as I can so it's a turnkey operation to be able to hand to somebody. And that's motivating right there. And I think it obviously helps the sale. Nobody wants to buy someone else's problems.
Well, I mean, the nice part, you got a clean business. Like you said, the financials were clean and well prepared. Inventory was desirable. We had a very competitive bidding process. Multiple buyers, entered the process, and it was clear I could have you be interviewed. Everybody watching this podcast will realize how creative a person you are and how easy it was to interview.
Thank you.
Was it a stressful, test, or was it easy?
Once the decision was made to list, it wasn't stressful at all. Things, fortunately, because I put all that work into getting the store ready and had a good staff, I actually, at that point, I was only working probably 3 days a week, maybe sometimes 4 days. So it's like it was pretty much like, wow, why am I even selling? I've got this thing running so smoothly now that I probably don't even need to sell. But the reality was that's when you want to sell.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. If you wait till things are crumbling around you and then say, okay, well, now I'm going to sell, nobody wants to buy a disaster. So get everything running as well, as cleanly and as best as possible. And even though at that point you might think, wow, I could probably not sell right now, that's the time to sell. Don't wait for catastrophe to hit.
Exactly. Thank you. Anything you would like to leave the audience with before we end the call?
Well, I would just say it's a process, much more emotional than I would have thought. I don't consider myself that emotional of a guy, but even going into the sale, again, I would second guess myself all the time. Do I want to sell? Don't I want to sell? And it took 9 months to make that decision. And then after the sale, people warned me about this, but there is a good year's worth of time where you do feel like you're a little bit of a loss. And mainly, I think the biggest reason is that you have had so much structure before owning a business that's what you did every day. Is your to-do list was so long that you never had to think about what to do. It was laid out right in front of you, like all these things to do. And then when that's taken away, you do feel like it takes time to prepare yourself for a life without a business. It's just the natural thing. And everybody that's had a business has told me the same, and they all say the same thing after, like they never regret selling the business. It's always just understand that it's going to take time to adapt to it. And I would say I'm very well adapted to it now, and I have no regrets whatsoever about that was the right time to do it.
Well, you're glowing with happiness. I'm so glad to have represented you and obviously become your friends. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it as well. Seth was great to work with, just to give him the plug. Very, very easy to work with. And again, financially turned out better than I had expected. So that's always a bonus on top of it.
Thank you very much. For those in the audience, please continue to watch other videos that you'll see. I'm out on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, and Apple. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next time.